Call in one of the PD sessions that we did before I went overseas, we spoke about how we can share the data from the recent PTE, PTM, and PTS tests with our students individually to try and get them to take some ownership for their performance, and in doing so, hopefully inspire or motivate them to want to do better. I know this is something the school has done in the past, but it's something that maybe we haven't done recently and need to start doing again. It was also something that came up in our data presentation earlier this week to the Ministry and DES when we were talking about possible strategies going forward to help improve data. One of the questions that we were asked by DES was why so many of our children are not answering all of the questions. And my response to that was possibly that our students give up too quickly, that they don't persevere enough, and that maybe they don't see the importance of the assessments. And so I think by sharing their individual data with them at a level that's appropriate to their age and their ability might help to motivate them to want to do better the next time they sit the tests. So I really do think it's worthwhile each of you sitting with each of your students maybe for 10-15 minutes to share the data with them so that they understand the importance of it. And like I said, hopefully motivate and inspire them to want to do better next time. Now, I know that Miss Natalia has already printed off all the individual reports for PTE, PTM, PTS, where it applies to your class, and even the PASS survey. And what I would suggest is that next week you all try to find the time to sit with each of your students, if nothing else, just to look at the data for the PTE and the PTM. Look at their individual reports and share it with them. Now, obviously, how much detail you go into will depend on their age and their ability. So, for example, a year one student may not last 10 minutes in a meeting. You might just want to have a quick chat with them about how they did in the tests, let them know their score, their standard age score, and encourage them to do better next time. It might just be that's as much as you can do. But our year six children could probably handle a lot more, sharing their scores, what the scores mean, and look at the individual reports in a bit more detail. I've got two I want to share very quickly for you. So this is just a individual maths report. I think I can share the child's name. I don't think it's any secret though, but it's going to be for Santos. And there's no reason why I chose Santos. It was just one of the first ones I came across. But Miss Diana is obviously Santos's teacher. And so, I would suggest maybe Miss Diana, you know him better than anybody else. But you might want to just show him this report, let him have a look through it. All of these reports need to go in the students' assessment files, their individual assessment folders that we started last year. And so Santos can come back to look at this in more detail at another time. But certainly sit with him, go through the report. I think the important parts to share are the number of questions they attempted. And we can see here that Santos only attempted 55 out of 56. That's not too bad. It might be worth just encouraging him to try every question. And I know for some of our students, they missed out a significant number. And so if that's the case, just talking to the child about why they missed out so many and setting the goal for them next time to try and answer all of the questions. And then I would also share the standard age score, and we can see for Santos it was 69, very low. And so making him aware that, the target for him at the next assessment period is to try and beat 69. Let's try and get in the 70s if we can. And so he's going to have to work hard over the next few weeks in lessons to learn as much as he can so he can improve that score. I don't think you maybe need to go into any of this stuff here. You could maybe mention that the yellow is where we want him to be and this is where he's working at the moment, but we know he can get there if he tries really hard, and really encourage and support him to let him know that it's possible for him to get there. You might want to, and again, this comes down to your knowledge of the child and how much they can cope with, but you might want to talk a little bit about the areas of maths that they're doing better in. So we can see that Santos answered 20% of the 40 questions in number, but he really struggled to get any of the measurement or statistics ones, any at all. And so maybe these are areas he needs to work on. This might be too much for him to understand down here. And you may or may not want to share some of these strategies that he needs to work on in class, or you might just want to keep that for you in your planning and make sure you accommodate those in your planning. So it depends how much you think the child can cope with. But I think at the very least, talking about the number of questions they attempted, particularly if there's a big shortfall, and their score, and what that means in terms of where we want them to be, and then lots of positive encouragement. So that was the maths one. And in terms of the English one, again, I just chose, this is Caden Stewart's, and no reason why I chose Caden. He was just one of the first children I came across. But again, a very similar sort of discussion with the child, in that I would certainly talk about how many questions they attempted. We can see that Caden attempted all of them, and that's great. So really praise him for that and encourage him to do the same in the next time we do these tests. Talk about the standard age score, and again, we can see that Caden is doing very, very well in English. He scored well above 100, so he's actually at greater depth. And again, you can just really praise him for that, encourage him to keep working hard. Things, he can't just sit back now that he's doing so well. He needs to continue pushing himself, because we want him to stay way up here at this end, and he's capable of that. Again, I don't think you need to go into all of this stuff with him. But if you think you can cope with that and it's important, then you can choose to do that. And again, whatever you think the child is able to take on here. So you might want to talk about the fact that he's doing very well in all areas, but maybe needs to work a little bit more on his grammar and punctuation. We can see that's his weakest area. Maybe a little bit of spelling as well, because he's up in the 90s here for reading comprehension. So maybe he needs to work on these two areas. And someone like Caden, who's doing so well in his English, could probably even cope with understanding a little bit more about the parts of comprehension that he needs to work on. We can see that retrieval and authorial technique are two areas he really needs to work on. He's doing very well with inference. So again, sharing that with him. And if you think that it's worth sharing the strategies with the child, then you can do that. But that might be something more for you to take on board in terms of the way that you are planning for the provision in class. So that's the two reports that I think you need to sit down and share with each of your students. And then when you've done that, you can take their reports, put them in their assessment folders, and then before we do the next assessments, which will be towards the end of this term or the start of next term, I would suggest that again, the children get their reports out just to remind themselves about how well they did this time, and to challenge themselves when they come to sit down and do the next assessment. And hopefully that will encourage them to at least try every question. So if you could have those meetings this week for me, that would be really helpful. I've got to make a presentation to the ministry, not this week coming, but the week after. And we've got to talk about some of the strategies we've put in place this year. And this is one of them that I really want to talk about. So if you could have those meetings, that would be really helpful. And if you could get someone to take a photograph of you having those meetings and just send those pictures to me, then I can include them in the presentation to show the ministry and other schools, the sort of work that we're doing. It'll just help me to give a sort of visual to the strategy as well as talking about it. I know that finding the time might be something that you struggle with, and so my suggestion at this point is to maybe look for a lesson this week where you can ask one of the assistants to hold the class. So it could be something like art or social studies or RE, maybe introduce the lesson, then step back, let the assistant supervise the class while you then have one or two meetings. And I'm not suggesting you'll get them all done this week, but if you can maybe start the process this week, get one or two done this week and a few over the course of the next couple of weeks, then we'll get them all done fairly promptly. So please let me know if any of this doesn't make sense. Please let me know if you've got any questions at all, or if you're struggling to try and get it all fitted in. Please come back to me and let me know. And obviously I will do whatever I can to support through that process. All right. Thanks very much. Bye.